Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, EJ Parker, here at Vintage Classic Solutions. Today we are looking at a more obscure brand of vintage toy rubber cars. These are from the 1970s. This company is called Garrett Rubber, or there's also another name. It changed names to Rubber Toys Unique. I have a rubber toy collection book here that helped me get to know this toy a little bit better. Now this is obscure and bizarre, which I like, and it's got a lobster on a 1976 Corvette, it looks like. How cool is that? A shell? I mean, this is just bizarre. Get the date there on the license plate. It's all rubber. The axles are kind of like stapled into place, proudly made in the USA. So what's the deal with this? You can find these on eBay. These are a little more on the expensive side. By that I mean 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks. I got this one for around 20 bucks, which is a good deal. I've been looking for one of these for a while for my collection, and this is it. Bright yellow. Now, what's the deal, like, about the story behind these toy cars? These are a more obscure rubber toy company, usually Auburn Rubber, which is this. They also make these cars, Auburn Rubber, mid 20th century, and Sun Rubber. These are the names you hear the most in the obscure world of rubber toy cars from the early mid late 20th century. Garrett Rubber has a relationship to these toy cars, and I'll tell you that in a minute. But it's not realistic. I mean, that's why I kind of like this brand, and that's probably why they fetch a little bit more money on eBay than your run-of-the-mill Auburn or Sun Rubber, just because of the obscurity factor. I'm a vintage and antique dealer, and I know that weird sells. So this is weird, right? So it sells. I bought it. It's proof. So the history of this company is related to Auburn Rubber. So the story is, someone that worked for Auburn Rubber, which initially was a tire company starting in 1910 in Auburn, Indiana. Then they switched to toys. But the story about Garrett Rubber is this, also known as Rubber Toys Unique. Mr. F.H. Thurman worked for the Auburn Rubber Company as a toy designer for several years before the company closed down in Auburn, Indiana, and moved to Deming, New Mexico. When Mr. Thurman left Auburn, he started his own rubber design and production company, which he called Garrett Sales Corp, because it was located in Garrett, Indiana, and later Rubber Toys Incorporated. Mr. Thurman was under restriction not to compete with Auburn in the manufacturing of toys, so he concentrated on rubber mechanical products. When Auburn Rubber closed down for good in 1969, Mr. Thurman was free to get into the toy business for himself, and that he did. Mr. Thurman designed and produced at least 18 different rubber vehicles. The sales brochure illustrates 14 varieties. He later added a peanut car in honor of President Carter, a jelly bean car for President Reagan, and an elephant car and a donkey car. These toys were well made of heavy rubber and incorporated several technical improvements over the hard mold rubber toys of the 1930s through 50s. Mr. Thurman incorporates the color in the mixture itself, so the toys do not have to be painted except for silver trim. He also added an inhibitor to the material to prevent the hardening of rubber over time. This is a book, Rubber Toy Vehicles by David Leopard from 2003, I think. So it shows you just how these toys are sold in a box on a store shelf. And they also produced a rubber toy ashtray, which is awesome. So what does all that jargon mean? It means this. This gentleman added a chemical to the rubber to make it more pliable, which it is compared to, let's say, this Auburn Rubber toy of the 1950s, which is pretty much stiff, and this Sun Rubber toy, which is stiff. I mean, it's rubber, but it would crack if you try to bend it. This is still a little bit pliable. Now, so I'm willing to bet that the person that started Garrett He worked for Auburn around this time when they were making these vinyl toys that were very flimsy rubber. You see it's bendable. It's not really rubber. It's not really plastic. It's vinyl. These are like 1950s, early and mid 1950s, maybe mid-late 1950s, and then this was produced in 1976. So you see the jump. I mean, this is almost back. This is back to a rubber, but as the book says, he added an inhibitor which makes these stay a little bit more rubber-like. It's a synthetic rubber as opposed to these earlier Auburn rubber toys being made of natural, like the white and beige colors are indicative of a natural, like a tree-based rubber, right? So that's a look at Garrett or Rubber Toys Unique, these obscure vehicles made of rubber from the mid-late 20th century. If you want one of these, you can find them on eBay. Just take your time to find the one you like. And as always, thank you for checking in.